Hello, encouragers. I'm Rebecca Scott, wife, mother of 4, author, and owner and designer of Rebecca Scott Designs. I'm here to encourage you, to make you feel the I can do this spirit each and every day of our awesome journeys to fulfill those many important roles. I believe we are fully equipped to execute, and I will provide you with as much knowledge and practices and systems as I can to help you understand just what I know you can do. Execute. We got this. Encourager. On today's podcast, we have got a frequent guest, and you know how I feel about the word frequent. It means I adored them, you guys adored them, so I get to have them back. And so this morning, I thought it would be interesting. We're recording in the morning. This is in mid-December, so you've got a little bit of background, but this will air in later January. But we are all working through what 2020 meant for us and what 2021 can mean. And the guest that I have today really helps us work through the practical ways that we can work through the fear and the uncertainty to just grasp onto the things that we can do something about, and to continually plant seeds and to continually think confidently, like we are going to move out of this. We are going to. And there are still things within our control that we can do. And so I'm really looking forward to talking through what Rebecca's year has been and what she just showed up for and how it is manifesting itself, for lack of a better term, in 2021 and what we can also take from that and do for ourselves. So welcome my guest, Rebecca Undem.
Hey.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here with you. Seriously.
Oh gosh. And we get to record on Zoom, listeners, so that I get to see her face and her reactions and stuff. And we were just talking about, as women, I just think that's super important. And there's something that will be interpreted in the audio as you're listening to this when we get to see each other and see how we're reacting, how their face lights up. So when I thought of you for recording again, I'm like, well, first of all, you're always really well downloaded. So it's like, okay, they really responded to what Rebecca had to say. And I still picture myself reading your book, how Mommy Got Her Groove Back, in my bed and laughing at so many of the relatable things and immediately emailing you and asking, like, would you be a guest? So I do highly encourage, to get a little background, you got to read her book, How Mommy Got Her Groove Back, because it is so relatable. And it's practical. It also gives advice on how to like tackle things, but it's just so, it's so relatable and funny. I like your sense of humor in there as well. Like I pictured myself in your grandparents' living room during it. I pictured you sitting by the pumpkin patch and going, okay, how are we going to do this? It's very well written. So I highly encourage you to read that first.
Thank you.
And then Rebecca, give us a little, I give nice long intros of everything that I feel. Give us a little bit of background about what you're up to right now before we launch into a little bit of what fear and uncertainty mean for 2021.
Yeah. So last year, middle of last year, I formed a nonprofit, an actual 501c3, which is a whole thing in and of itself. And the business that we launched is called Growing Small Towns. And it really is a culmination of like everything I've ever experienced, I think, as a woman. So, and as a professional. So I was a, communications and leadership training, like a corporate training consultant, basically. So always was in front of a room doing teaching, and facilitation. It's just totally where I'm meant to live. And obviously I'd been a public speaker as well, right? Doing more personal engagements versus kind of that corporate, but I had both worlds. So Growing Small Towns started to come to me as an idea. And really it started more with the building than even with the programming, which is kind of interesting. So we're renovating a space on Main Street. And in my book, I talk about it because I talk about the Ben Franklin store where my grandparents ran their business for years when I was a little girl. It's that building. And we just closed on at the end of October. So just, 6 weeks ago or so. And in the space, we're doing a mixed use business and kind of event and education center along with co-working. So it's a mixed use space. We have a focus on the arts. We have a focus on helping people grow through the development opportunities that they can get. And then it's all about innovation and creativity. So that has been what I've been working on for the last, well over a year now. And I didn't own the building yet when the pandemic hit. But I was at a point where I still could have backed out. I mean, and I think that's something to mention. I wasn't in it like I hadn't invested. I'd invested a ton of time and some money, of course, but it wasn't, I could have said, okay, like clearly this isn't the time, clearly this isn't going to work. Like nothing. I mean, who's going to do something like this now? And I am so grateful that I didn't. And that's part of what I hope I can convey to your encouragers, your listeners today, that especially now there's so much, it's so much uncertainty. We just like swim in it, and it's not even just uncertainty. I think it's negativity too. Unfortunately, it's so much swirling around us that I get that it can feel really hard to say, I'm still going to chase that dream of mine, like 2021, new year, new me. Let's do this. Like I get it, but I hope I can share a bit of what I've learned along the way, because our dreams they still need pursuing. So that's kind of what I've been up to, the last year.
I'm so excited. And we will keep rolling out with any updates on the building as well. But I do have to ask this question because this is what occurred to me. So I know the listeners are asking this too. Is this a space where we could go and have a think tank with your group, or will this be like a membership thing? How do you picture the building folding out for those of us that don't live in town?
Yeah, great question. So it's both and. It will be membership based, but then we will have open forums and open events, because I want it, but it's not going to be open to the public every day because of the fact that it's membership based, right? So there'll be, a locked door that your key code gets you in and out of. And that's to respect the people that are in there using it as a workplace. But I intend to have many opportunities for people to just come in and actually, and you would be able, so like a think tank session, you would just be able to book that with us. And then of course, we want people in the space all the time. But that's the balance that I'm striking now. We'll see if we change models after we're in it a while, if that works or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that's how we're going to start.
Listen to that. I love that you just said that, because you guys, it's totally possible to switch models.
Yeah.
You can keep trying. Like they say, I have a brick and mortar and this is what I'm doing. Like I have a boutique and this is what I do. Wait, what? Like you don't want to, nope, this is my model. Ladies, gentlemen, whoever's listening, once you discover what you're going into and diving into, it is absolutely permissible to switch, to change, to innovate. So just note that. I love that you said that, because that is true. You won't, obviously you have a very good plan laid out, but you're also open to like, oh, wait, maybe we'll also end up doing this.
I actually think that's the key. That's the key to moving through all of the fear and the doubt that we have when we start new things. Because, okay, so here's a few things I know about me, and I don't know if I have a feeling a lot of your listeners are going to be like, oh gosh, that's so me too. But I tend to think that if I research just a little bit more the proper way to do X, Y, or Z, then I'm going to have all the information I need so that all the doubt and the fear is just like gone. Like it's just an education thing. If I just gather more resources, or I ask more people, or I study it a little harder, I'll figure it out. Well, that is honestly, it's just not how it works. So going into something and saying, I don't know if there's a percentage, is it an 80% plan? I don't know. And I don't think that matters. It's more about, we have a choice, every single one of us. And I think this is a bigger than even just business right now, but we have a choice you have to be tethered to something when you're moving through life, right? You can either be rooted in fear, like you can let the fear root you down, or you can be rooted in hope, like that you can't have both. And so I am choosing to be rooted to the belief of what I think is possible, what I think can be. And if I end up being wrong, let's talk about that, right? Because I think it's fear of failure. We're like, oh, well, what if I fail at this? Well, I think the first thing to do is to actually articulate what is failure. Does failure mean that it didn't go the way I wanted it to? Okay. Is that really failure? If I lose a lot of money, is that failure? What is it? So I think sometimes we just let fear be this big nebulous thing that we just let overtake us entirely. And it's like articulate it a little bit, right? Because I think there's so much learning that comes from taking something on, and that there's never any failure to be had there, right? You will develop parts of yourself that you can't even fathom. So I think the big thing about it is staying open-minded and understanding that you get better by doing, not by thinking about it.
Oh, it's right there. That sentence right there. Absolutely. You will get better by doing and making the mistake or making the success. It can go
Right.
either way than you ever
Totally.
will by just thinking about it.
Yep.
100%.
And so it's that perfectionism thing. Like if I just, and that's perfectionism, which ends up having us put the brakes on things because we're aiming to do it all right. There isn't, with business, it's about iteration. That is what business is. So, going into it saying, this is how I foresee it. And especially if I had to take out a huge loan for this building. The bank didn't just say, obviously there's things that have to be in place, but if the bank will give you money based on your business plan, you have enough of a plan to move forward. Right. I mean, that's just the truth.
Yeah.
So then it's paying attention. What are people telling me is working, isn't working? And then be open to letting other things and other ways of doing things into your world. It's having a loose grip on your plan so that you still allow magic. You got to leave room for magic.
Yes.
And that comes through the process of doing and trying.
Oh, so good. Okay. Tell me a little bit. So the building becomes available. You've done all the background. The bank stamps approval. Yep. Her idea is going to work. She's going to fly with it. COVID hits. Is it like, what part of you was like, I'm going to do it anyways? Was it like this guttural feeling of, I'm going to do this anyways? Was it like a sunbeam on your head and you're like, okay, God just told me I got to do this? Describe how your decision making was when March happened.
Yeah. So,
or more so when the building happened.
Yeah. Okay. So, when COVID hit, I had two big events that I was planning, and they were supposed to happen in early April and early May. And those were going to be the things that just helped me. Like those were going to be, in my mind, the decision makers of whether it's a go or a no-go. We're really going to be able to see if we get the support we need, if we find the funding we need, and all of that. Well, those things didn't happen. But what did happen is that suddenly the concept of co-working, the concept of Zoom meetings for, just for day-to-day activity, which I've been living in for over a decade, right? I've been working from home. This is my home office. I've been working here for over a decade. So, but to other people, those things were still very foreign. Suddenly, everybody was thrust into that situation. And so what COVID did for me is it normalized these ideas that seemed really out there and far-fetched prior to March. So I think it's really interesting to, for me, it's been interesting to watch because I never thought of myself as like a pioneer of any sort. I didn't think of myself that way. And yet here I was really practiced at doing this remote work thing. And our building and everything we're trying to do can just continue to support people for however long this has to be how we work. And I think, honestly, we're never going to work exactly the same way again. And that's okay. And our buildings, my building and our organization supports all of that. So for me, it was kind of definitely like oh my gosh, I don't have to do this now. And maybe I should just pull the plug. I mean, I definitely had those. I had a lot of sleepless nights throughout the summer. I mean, for sure. But what I did, and how I got through that was I kept reaching out, asking people, who do you know that would be interested in hearing about what it is we're trying to do? And I just kept planting seeds. I just kept planting seeds. And I say that all the time, and it's probably an overused cliche, but the whole beauty of farming and tying all of that to like my bigger life, I live in an agricultural place and my husband farm, you can do everything right and certain seeds still don't germinate. And that isn't because you did something wrong. So it's this beautiful metaphor for how, every single action I take and every single person I talk to is a seed that's getting planted. And I don't know if and when or in what way it's going to bloom. But what I said to my dad just a couple of weeks ago, I said, I feel like I'm standing in a field full of poppies that I planted. Like all of a sudden they're just popping up everywhere, and that's just such a cool feeling. And it is part of my effort, but in this world where we're trying a lot of different things and you don't really know which things are going to land and which things are going to take off. But that's what you rest in taking the next step and making the next phone call and doing the next thing. It's not about sitting back and fretting about how I could do it better. The whole thing about I just need to gather more information and I'll figure it out. That's not how it works. You can read every book on business and it still isn't going to fully translate to you and your life and your business. We've got to get in there, get our hands dirty and try. And so I always encourage people to, if there's a way to try it in a small way, that's a great way to test it out. That's a great way to try it.
I call it the 1%. Right. I call it the 1%. You need to 1%. Do the one Google search or the one email or the one phone call or order the one supply, just 1% it. And if you are crawling 1% it, that's fine. You're still taking a motion towards it, just 1% it. Right. But I love the idea and I love the visual of you standing in the field of poppies. That is so clear.
And you all of a sudden you look over and there's another one and you go, oh my gosh, and it feels beautiful, but it feels like the fruit of hard work. It's just I feel like I am standing in such a cool space and time. And even though there's a ton of uncertainty still around our economy and around all of it, I mean, it's still, I just feel like now more than ever, we all, the people that, especially I feel like the people that are enthusiastic and passionate and optimistic and idealistic, people that kind of view the world like I do, the world needs us. Like we need to show up. We need to show up and remind people that there's still things to hope for. And so this T-shirt that I'm wearing came from a little boutique in Oaks here. And it says, be groovy or leave, man, because, my book's called How Mommy Got Her Groove Back. I'm like, I think this was meant to be mine. She also, though, had this beautiful canvas print that said, you'll never regret having hope. And I just feel like that is such a beautiful thing to remind yourself, because, what's your option right now is just to be miserable and assume the worst and everything. That's really the option, right? And I can't live in that space. I think you look at my sweet little children that I'm raising. I want them to see a mom that is rooted in hope and belief of the good things, because there's so much negativity and I refuse to play into it. And I'm not saying that I don't have tough days, because I do. But I also think a huge skill in just all of life is learning how to discipline disappointment. Disappointment is a natural part of life. We get let down sometimes. But being able to keep it in check and keep it in perspective and not let it overtake everything you're trying to do. That's a really important thing to learn how to do. But the only way to do that is to allow yourself to fall sometimes, right? We don't build that character when everything is easy. We aren't growing. I think that's a huge thing for people to realize. When we're coasting along, it feels really good sometimes. And I think we need moments of coasting, but we need to also realize that our moments of our best growth and character development really come in times of challenge.
I talk frequently too about pairings. And so I get this immediate feeling when I'm uncomfortable and I'm afraid of something. I immediately picture growth. So I'm like, oh, I'm really uncomfortable. Ooh, that means I'm growing. I pair them together immediately. If I'm in a meeting, I'm like, I actually don't know the answer to that. I may not say that out loud, but I'm like, I think I'm supposed to know the answer to that. And I do not know that. And I'm here among my whole team. And so immediately in my brain go, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Oh, so wait, we're growing. And then it's immediate excitement. Okay, you know what? I don't know that answer. And to be honest, it makes me uncomfortable just because it is the unknown, but I'm going to research it. I'm going to find out. I'm going to get that answer for you. And then I immediately think, oh my gosh, we all just grew. I love the idea of the roots that you're talking about. Make sure that you are rooted in hope, because we owe it to ourselves and to our family, especially, to tell them how we are going to react to this. This is the thing about the national pandemic. I think, well, now we know what we'll do in a crisis. Before we might have had a fear, I wonder what I would do if my whole life shut down for 9 months. And we're like, that's a lot of fear. I don't know what I would do. Hopefully that never happens. Well, now we know. Like, can't guess now. Now I know.
I think if we overlook the incredible resilience of who we are, like if we overlook that, we're missing an enormous blessing of this period of time. Because like I said, you have people doing things that you couldn't have forced them to do. And they're doing them because they were, they had no choice. When we get backed into a corner, we will rise to the call. Like we will rise to the situation, and we have. And so I know that the hardest thing I think now, it's just that it's carrying on for so long. And but what I refuse to do, Rebecca, and I don't know if you feel this way too, it's like, so what is the alternative? It's either to keep carrying on like there's going to be a better tomorrow, or we wait until that better tomorrow comes. How long are we going to wait? I mean, and what are we waiting for? What's the sign then that, I just think waiting is, we tell ourselves it's the rational thing to do, but it's really just letting fear drive the bus, right? Like it's just delaying what we could be contributing. Because for me too, this is all about contribution. I have gifts that I've been given, as do you, as does every single person. And I think my only job on this planet is to steward them well. Like God-given gifts, right? I'm different from you, and we all have specific things that we can contribute in the way that we were designed to contribute them to. And I think delaying that, it's the delaying of making that contribution. And that can't be ever the answer, right? Figure out a small way to do it if you have something that you want to give and you want to share, because we need people showing up.
Okay, so Rebecca, chat me through. Let's say a gal is like, you know what? I'm going to throw. This might be what they're saying at the time, and I would reverse their saying. I'm going to throw caution at the wind. I am going to start the business in January 2021. Mm-hmm. What would you tell them for like a mindset and some practical ways to funnel through how they should start this in 2021?
Yeah. So I think, again, going back to the idea of how can you start it in a small way that you can keep your arms around, that you can. So I think depending on the nature of the business, and that's the hard thing about this is, right, businesses are so varied. But if you can find 5 people that would be the user of your service or your product, and beta test it, do a small pilot with 5 people well, even, make sure that they're going to give you honest feedback. I mean, I think that's a part of it too. But to me, that's a really easy way to start something simple, because if those 5 people love it, or they marginally like it, and then they tell you how it could be different or better, that's real customer feedback. And if you're a service provider and those 5 people get results as a result of working with you, then they're also testimonials. And the whole thing is like, do I need a website? Do I need this? Do I need that? Do I need all of these things? No, what you need is proof of concept. That's what you need. And by that, I just mean you will learn so much more. Like, so you put a website up. Let's say that's your thing. Like, I'm going to put a website up. Well, what are you going to put on it? How can you speak to what it is that you do? Now, again, I think products are a little different. You're a product maker primarily. You also do services though as well. And I think you need to prove to yourself as well that you can actually help people. So I think pick a small little pilot of people and start there. Mindset wise though, I think it is about that it's continual learning. And that, again, learning doesn't just come through educating yourself and taking a class and hiring a coach and doing all those things necessarily. That's good, but it comes from taking action, like stepping into it, doing it, and then learning from it. And then being honest with yourself. Does this work actually, is it as good as I thought it was going to be? Is it good for my life? Does it fit into the world that I have, for myself? Because I think sometimes, because success is defined by the person doing it. It isn't about what other people think or what other people tell you success is. It has to be something that fits with you. And that's what I have always thought is so beautiful about you. Your family is just in it. Like it isn't, you do not compartmentalize your business and your family. They're not separate. And that's not, again, I want to make this really clear to people. It's not everybody would do it that way. And that's actually okay. But we've got to be honest with ourselves about what it is that we want. Do you want your kids and your family to be an active part of your business? Then design it that way. If you don't, then design it that way and just be intentional about it. But I think the big thing is quit telling yourself you need more information or that somehow you're going to get it right. Let go of that idea of perfectly launching. And it's messy and it's chaotic. And that's where the magic happens. And it's hard to lean into that if you're a perfectionist by nature. But I swear, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
I love too that you just gave them permission. You know, people are like, well, I want to do it just like Rebecca's doing it. She has the kids right in there, and I just can't do that. And you think, of course not. You have to do what will work for you. If you're working on a computer and you can't finish a sentence because you have toddlers in the background, I don't do that. Like, yes, I'm the CEO and the owner and the leader of my company, but I also sew, so I can stop in the middle of the pocket and go get the snack. So it's a different situation. So I love that you gave people permission. And that you also define it for them. Decide what you want and then design it that way. What would serve you best? And it's okay to ask for that and aim for that.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I think to me, like that's the hardest thing about the gurus that we follow. And I honestly, I'll be brutally honest. I don't follow very many like influencer business type people on social media. I just don't. Because I went down that path at a time, like an earlier time in my career where I was doing my own thing. I sought out the advice of all of these people and tried to follow their plan. And it honestly just didn't work for me because I somehow did never factor into the equation that I'm different from them. Like I am my own person. And so until you really, giving yourself permission to actually be who you are, I think is a huge part of success in life, period. You know, we're never going to get the results other people have by trying to be like them. It's one thing to look to other people and find them inspirational or aspirational. That's great. But the goal isn't to be them. The goal is to still be you. And I just think sometimes we spend, and that's a whole, for women, that's a whole other topic, right? It's just the comparison trap of social media and the world that we live in right now. It's kind of insane, you know, how much it pulls us away from who we actually are as people.
I think it's also why a lot of my systems and coaching is about the practical side, so that I'll help you work out what we all have to do. We all have to cook and make beds and do laundry and do our work. So I'll help you work out those systems so that you can thrive in those. But you're the one that's going to define for you what it looks like. And be more of yourself when you've got the practical part of things done. And that's where in my coaching and my encourager courses, I feel like we get stuck because we're like, I still cannot figure out how to get my laundry done every week or cook all the meals or show up for the activities. So I help them iron all those things out so that you can become more of who you are and show up more fully for your job, uniquely you.
Right. It's so
true.
Yeah. It is so true. And again, it comes back to stewarding your gifts well. You know, like that's the other thing too. There'll be things in your business when you start, and if you have some early success and you need to get help, let's say, right, and you need to hire people. And for some people listening, they're going to be like, I'm so far from hiring somebody I can't even imagine, and that's okay, right? But all of it is meant to be. It's got to be filtered through you and what you feel good about, what you can do well, and knowing also that there's going to be a lot of stuff when you start that you're going to just have to do. You know, we don't immediately get to like hire somebody and outsource everything. It doesn't work like that. So there again, I just sometimes feel like the hard and fast rules that have been laid out for a lot of us, there's maybe truth and they certainly work some of the time, but you're not going to know until you step into it, start doing it, and that's how we figure things out. And I think that's the big thing too. I am remodeling a building, Rebecca. I actually don't know anything about this scale or scope of renovation. I am learning so much. So a huge thing too for me is to get out of my own way. And my ego has no seat at the table here. I don't know what I'm doing. a good chunk of the time right now. And so you have to get around you the people that do know those things, and that's where you get to be really honest about whether or not, so for me, like the subcontractors and the people I've been working with, I've already swapped a couple people out of the original team because they didn't have that full alignment. Like I didn't feel good spending time with them. And so that's like, for me, that's a big deal, like an energetic or kind of values alignment for who is in this with me. That's a really big deal to me. Making sure that they feel like people I want to have on my team. But man, I don't know half of what I'm dealing with. And so I just ask a ton of questions. And, I have to keep telling myself, like my family, thank God we are healthy. Like in this kind of scary time, like we're healthy. We've got so much to be thankful for. Everything in business, it can be figured out. Sometimes I think we just make mountains out of, not that they're molehills. I mean, some of what I've been dealing with has been huge stuff, but it's not huge in the big picture of life. So we have to find a way to stay really connected to like, how significant is this thing I'm freaking out about in the big scope? And the only way to do that is to carve out time for yourself to get that perspective, which I think is really important. A little bit of quiet time every day, if you can get it, which I know isn't always easy, especially now we've got kids, like parents that usually don't have kids at home, have them at home. And we're like, it's just so chaotic, but taking just a couple minutes, because that's what helps keep those big, scary things in check. It's like they can be figured out. Business stuff can almost always be figured out, no matter how hard it seems. There's a way.
And so much easier in the last decade than it was when I started. So I started 16 years ago. Oh my gosh, it was so difficult to do anything. I mean, we still had dial-up internet, you guys, dial-up. So to check email, it took 6 hours because it was still so slow. So I just think now, like, when people say, okay, I'm thinking about starting a business, but I just I don't know how I'm going to start. And I'm like, what?
Right.
I'm already, and I don't mean this like I'm a superior way. I just you could do all those things in less than an hour. You can start a website, post on Facebook that you're starting it, start booking appointments all within less than an hour. There's absolutely no excuse other than the fear to start this. So just get practical and just start doing and work through the fears in the middle of it. Don't, I kind of have this new theme in this last year of when fear comes in, I always try to picture it somewhere in your body because everybody experiences it in their body physically. Yeah. Where is it? Is it in your throat? Is it in your chest? Is it in your head? Wherever. Think of that. And then don't just stomp it out and try to outrun it or try to outthink it like we talked about, but rather put your arm around it or place your hand on your chest or on your throat, wherever it is, and go, okay, I hear you. I see you. I feel you. Let's chat about this. And then play out. What's that worst case scenario? Because chances are somebody's been through it. You can ask them about it. You could probably Google how to solve it. Or you can pray about it, throw that fear out the window and keep moving. There's the only excuse we have right now not to start something is probably the fear piece of it and some practical things, but you can still move around so many of those things. So get your mindset right on how you're going to react to the fear.
Yeah. I'll tell you, for me, like when we closed on the building and the building became mine, it actually unlocked in me even more tenacity than I had before, I think, which has actually been really fun because every challenge now is, I've got to figure it out. Like so we call the building Dorothy Jane, which was my grandmother's name. That's what we're calling her, like while we're renovating her, just so, because it's fun to think of her as a thing that needs to be loved back to something new, right? Like it's fun to think of it as a person. So I just constantly have to say, well, okay, so even if I don't want to deal with this, or it's really scary and big and hard, and I don't know what to do, Dorothy Jane is my problem. And I owe it to her to figure this out. So we're going to figure it out. So I think sometimes too, it's just the resolve. Like you have to just say, maybe on a practical side, you could just say, I'm giving this 6 months, just and commit. Because it really is about commitment. I think where we fall short is when we're like, well, I'm going to try it, but then you kind of half go at it. And it really doesn't get the full attention and priority. You don't give it the priority and the attention it deserves. You don't focus on it So then you get kind of lackluster results. And then you say, oh, see, I knew I shouldn't have started it. Well, come on. Like you didn't really give it an effort. So, for me, it was like buying the building just made it like, it is mine. And I shared this on social one time. Like I was in the building and I was feeling so overwhelmed by the stuff I couldn't do anything about. We were dealing with, I had an asbestos inspector in the building at that time. I had an architect that was bringing up all sorts of really scary and very expensive things. We're talking about having to install a sprinkler system, and we're talking 6-figure additions to my already 6-figure budget, just to put it in perspective. It was very, very overwhelming, just super, super costly. And I was down in the basement of the building, and the building had been just plump full of stuff. And I was down there, and my dad and I had just hauled a bunch of stuff out to a trailer, and he's out taking the stuff to the dump, and I'm back down in the basement. And there's all this just kind of, it's just kind of messy on the floor. And so I pick up a broom, and I'm by myself now, and I start sweeping it. And I stopped and I thought to myself, this is so stupid. Like, what a stupid activity. Like, of all the things to be doing, I'm sweeping the floor. And then I stopped and I thought to myself, but it's because I can sweep the floor. And like Dorothy Jane's my responsibility. Her floor is dirty. It's my responsibility. And this is something I can do. And so as silly as that sounds, it actually got me out of this funk, because there's probably always something that we can do. And we spend way too much time focused on the things that are outside of our control. And we need to shift our focus to, okay, I maybe can't influence all of that one big thing, but what's one small thing I could do that can still keep me moving forward, right? Because it's a million tiny steps is what it is. Everybody thinks that we leap and do this big, enormous thing all at once. And it's a million small commitments is what it is. So I always encourage that, like, do what you can, take some action. And it often too puts you in that mindset of progress. Like you feel like you're getting something done. And then that's a real momentum too. Did you hear about the God wink on the day that I bought the building? Did you happen to catch my social media about this? Okay. I feel like
do tell.
You're going to love it. Okay. Because you read the book, and like you probably feel like a kinship with my family, even just because you read the book and I talk about them all the time. So the day that we closed on the building was October 29th. And our courthouse is in the community over from Oaks. And so my husband and I had gone over and we signed, and I was interested in getting a little more history on the building. And so I asked the county if I could have the abstract. And so on the way back to Oaks, my husband's driving, and I'm flipping through the abstract, and just like, do I know any of these people that were because the building is over 100 years old, right? And I mean, I had my grandparents bought it in 1980. So I knew a lot of the recent history since I've been alive. But so anyway, I was looking through it, and I come to the page where my grandparents bought it. I found their warranty deed. And I said to my husband, oh, look, here's the warranty deed where Grandpa and Grandma bought it. They signed their warranty deed 40 years previous on the same date. Can you even? I literally, like, I looked at it, and I looked at the date, and I just went, oh, like I just got completely overwhelmed with feeling. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I feel all the fear, and I'm totally freaked out. And I could close my eyes and picture my grandparents, like I'm going to get very emotional, but like holding hands and just having all the same feelings that I had. And I felt like, you know what I felt like, Rebecca? I felt like I was made to do this. Like I came from people, like this is in my blood. This is who I am. And it just felt like such an affirmation and validation. And so now, I mean, honestly, things are still hard sometimes, but it feels so right. And it's just such a blessing. I had to share that with you because it's like it was the coolest thing. Yeah. It's so special.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, it's that God wink doesn't even describe it, but absolutely what a gift. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Rebecca. What a great way to end the podcast and telling us when we don't plant that seed and we choose to let fear be a part of it, we are robbing ourselves of the moment Rebecca was given.
Yeah.
Where, into fruition. This is what I was meant to be. And it may take years. It may take years for you to discover that. But every time you choose fear over hope and you choose not to do the one Google search, not to do the 1%, you are letting something go that God is desperately trying to bust into your life.
Oh, so amen. Oh, seriously, what you just said, like that feeling or that knowing or that idea that's on your heart, in your mind, it's not letting go. It is your gift to steward forward. There's a reason that you've been given it, right? So it might take a long time for it all to fall into place. But it's never going to fall into place if you let fear take over and you let fear dictate whether you say yes or no. So I think that's, man, I hope that this really makes people feel like, oh, I can do it, because you can. Like, there's never been a more possible time to do the things that we're talking about ever.
Or an easier time. And people are so amazing right now and flexible about things. They're like, oh, you're starting what? Okay, well, great. How do I support it? How do I help you? How do I whatever? Because we're all used to reading the fine print, right? Right now we're like, okay, what are the rules? What are the what is your store's policy? You know, we know how to read fine print, so start it. We'll be willing to read 4 or 5 steps in before we'll disregard it. We're like, okay, we're with you.
There's a lot of grace.
Remember to plant the seed.
Yeah, a lot of grace being given right now, like a ton. So leverage that.
That's a good way. That's a great way of putting it. There's just lots of grace right now. So remember, encouragers, to make sure that you plant the seeds, whatever that is, one at a time, so you can stand in the poppy field like Rebecca is doing. And remember to root yourself in hope. Root yourself in hope. And I want you to picture Rebecca going through this book and the date. Oh, you're going to have a Lifetime movie after this, but without weird mother-in-laws in the movie. It's just a beautiful movie about how this happened. It's like, root yourself in the hope and then pray for those moments. Pray for those God winks. Pray for that fruition of what you have. I mean, for me, it was instilled in me as early as the age of 4. I watched my mom work her tail off sewing and never charge enough for her sweatshirts at the craft store and going, Mom, that took you like 20 hours and you're charging $12. And I remembered, and when I was doing the math, obviously I was older, but I remember thinking, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to charge and make sure I'm making a living at it and bless this time-worn tradition. And there's definitely moments, and unfortunately, it always happens when I'm live, where all of a sudden I read the rules for our giveaway and they're like all official and legit. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I start crying because I think, I knew I could do this. And here's this moment where I'm having to read rules of how to apply to win this $250 bag. So I pray for that for you encouragers in the year of 2021, that you will have these amazing experiences where you will picture yourself in the poppy field, where you keep rooting yourself in hope, and there will be people come alongside you who will stab a little bit, take a little bit of criticism, but you just keep moving forward. Remind yourself to listen to the Encourager podcast. Remind yourself to seek out Rebecca Undem and her amazing building and the kind of spaces and opportunities that she's going to provide. Without further ado, on our awesome soapbox from the Rebeccas, until next time, encouragers, we got this.
I know how you can start executing on all the things that God has equipped you to do. You can pick up my book at theencouragerpodcast.com and check out the store complete with book, journal, and the master course. Also, make sure to check out the resources tab where you'll get a hold of all the PDFs from the podcast. Thank you for tuning in, encouragers. Remember to subscribe so it's automatically on your phone. And please rate and review me. We got this, encouragers.